A very good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this press conference. The Commission today adopted the EU's new strategy to shape a global, clean and resilient transition. To present this vision today, we have the Executive Vice-President Ribera, Commissioner Hoekstra for Climate, Net Zero and Clean Growth, and Commissioner Jorgensen for Energy and Housing. We will first hear their introductory remarks and will then take your questions. I will now pass the floor to Executive Vice-President Ribera.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, because it's been a long day already. Allow me to start with a sentence that you may remember. Ban Ki-moon talking about planet, prosperity and people when referring to the Sustainable Development Goals. If you add peace, you could identify the key references that explain why counting on a global vision for energy and climate matters. Around the world, billions of people still lack what many of us take for granted here in Europe. Over 2.2 billion people have no access to safe drinking water, 3.5 billion live without proper sanitation, nearly 750 million people remain without electricity, and more than 1.8 billion people live in areas exposed to severe flooding. The world produces over 2 billion tons of waste each year. These figures show that many regions still lack the most basic infrastructure: reliable power grids, clean water systems, sewer networks and waste collection services. Behind these numbers, the truth is quite simple. Without clean water, reliable energy, resilient infrastructure, there can be no security, no prosperity and no sustainable future. Without a consistent vision on climate action and energy, we cannot guarantee prosperity and peace. The world needs to generate wealth and climate security. And this is very precisely why we need to think about safe development strategies. When thinking how to achieve it, we may choose whether we can work in an efficient or in a wasteful manner, sustainably or destructively, or we can think in terms of being inclusive or think just about a few. Europe already chose its path. Our business, innovators and workers know how to deliver green and resilient solutions with high social and environmental standards. The European industrial community, the corporates are ready. And if we do not do it together with other partners, there may be others that can take their chance. But when European companies engage, they bring something unique: high standards, trust, rule of law, and European values. They build prosperity that lasts. And this is why we think that we have both the obligation and the responsibility to be part of this task. An obligation because it is the foundation of a climate-resilient world free of fossil fuels. A responsibility because this is where the new economy is emerging, where our competitiveness and leadership must remain anchored. The financial curve shows that early capital deployment in low-carbon technology offers higher long-term returns, while inaction leads to future cost and volatility. Even more, there is a $2 trillion global clean tech market expected by 2035. Some key actors are stepping back or even weaponizing climate action and clean technologies through disinformation. Others may have the technical capacity to seize opportunities, but they do not necessarily share our standards or our values. Europe must stay engaged. This is where we are. We think that the global vision on climate and energy builds on the clean industrial deal and extends it beyond our borders, develops the external dimension of the clean industrial deal. The EU stays the course set by the Paris Agreement. The EU bets on its clean industrial deal. We are a reliable partner. We want to come along with our corporates, our companies. We want to be strategic both in geopolitical terms but also in terms of corporates and creation of wealth. We will act on adaptation and resilience. We will act on energy. We will build resilience as part of what we could consider just common sense. This is our plan to support Europe's industry abroad. We want to promote visibility for European companies to connect business with investment projects through the Global Gateway and other financial tools, to combine public and private efforts to leverage institutional and diplomatic partnerships, to support the different reforms and avenues that are already being shaped all over the world. We want to be what we say we need, to build on partnerships, predictability and purpose, to ensure that local communities can feel the benefits of the green agenda. Only by upholding the standards we set for ourselves, we can build a secure economy and a more prosperous Europe, but also a more prosperous world. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Executive Vice President. Commissioner Hoekstra.
Thank you, and ladies and gentlemen, very good to see all of you here today. It would be an understatement to say that the world is much more complicated from geopolitical terms than 5 years ago. And that is even true if you were looking back just 12 to 18 months. We've been navigating a landscape with heightened tension, fierce competition, and increasingly more transactionalism. That is basically the world we're living in. So the rules of the games have changed. The old ways simply don't work out always anymore. And with that in mind, we feel it is important to re-anchor, rethink how to move forward in the direction of the EU's global climate and energy diplomacy. And that is why we're having the communication today. I'll focus on the climate part and share a couple of our thoughts on the why, the what, and the how. First, on the why. The question is, of course, no longer whether this clean transition is happening, but much more how fast, where it is happening, who will benefit, and what the landscape will be throughout this transition. Across the world, we're growing our economies, while at the same time cutting emissions. And as I'm sure you are aware, Europe is leading the way here. As a matter of fact, if you were to look at our own statistics, you would find that since 1990 we have grown our economy by 68%, and over that same period have managed to make sure our emissions have been falling by roughly 37%. And just to be very clear, we continue to be all in. We are a climate leader. We want to drive sustainable change. And going forward, we want to make sure that we're doing so in a way that leverages more than in the past our industrial and technological strength. And that leadership, in our view, should then also pay off. Think about what we did with the EU's Clean Industrial Deal, where we're actually making sure that we are much more interconnected and that decarbonization is a strategy for competitiveness, for climate, and for independence. And that is the type of offer we also want to bring forward much more explicitly to the world. We're going to tap into what others expect and want from us, but also be clear about what is in our best interest. As Teresa said, because that will also give much more opportunities to our companies. And we'll be doing so while at the same time, just to be very clear-eyed about that as well, helping out third countries who, by the way, continue to represent the vast majority of global emissions, 94% to be precise. Then on the what. It needs to be first and foremost about multilateral cooperation. Why? Well, simply because we are convinced that it continues to work out. If you were just to look at, it was a different time, but still, just to look at what 10 years of Paris have accomplished, you would find that all the most radical and extreme scenarios, and that is very good news, are now off the table. That doesn't mean we're not still stuck with a huge problem, but it shows that commitment to multilateralism, to diplomacy, and working together also with those with whom you do not yet agree actually works. And we're going to continue with that, even though it will be in a more assertive way. Third, on the how. We're using many different tools. We're working on many fronts, like on improving climate finance. And the EU's offer is to use our trade, our investments and technical cooperation actually for the transition. And we will make sure it also benefits our businesses. But one very important element in that is, of course, our carbon pricing. If you were to look at the data, you would find that in the last 10 years, the number of countries introducing carbon pricing has actually doubled. And I just came back from Brazil, and I was very much encouraged by what the Brazilians are doing in this front, but also our partners in Chile, in Mexico, and frankly speaking, from all across the globe. Our system is now in place for 20 years. It was the first in the world. Of course, we also have CBAM, which promotes carbon pricing with our trade partners. And we have a special task force set up roughly a year ago to support partners as they implement carbon pricing systems. The EU is already working closely with many of them, but it is very good to see that there is appetite for ever more, and this is certainly what we're going to continue to do so. Finally, in this realm, let me also say that it is encouraging to see that major economies like Japan, like China and Brazil have adopted or expanded their carbon pricing policies. Ladies and gentlemen, of course there's much more to be said, but the bottom line is here we're working to fulfill the goals set out in the Paris Agreement. The European Union will continue to be a reliable partner. We're open for business, we're open for cooperation, and we will make sure we'll do so more assertively, more needs-based and more business-oriented. And we'll do what it takes to speed up the global clean transition in a way that benefits our people, businesses and future. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Jorgensen.
We live in turbulent times. The political atmosphere has changed. Multilateralism is under pressure. The United States of America has decided to step out of the Paris Agreement. At the same time, climate change is hitting the most vulnerable countries on this planet harder than ever. Every year, records of high temperatures are broken. Last year was the hottest year ever recorded. This year will be even hotter, and most likely next year will be even hotter again. The consequences are a catastrophe. The consequences are so severe that they're undermining some of the progress and economic growth that many countries were experiencing in the developing world. So, the EU must act. When others step down, we must step up. And this is exactly what we're doing with this strategy. It's not just words on pieces of paper. This is a real paradigm shift. For too long, even though the EU has made a lot of positive difference in the world on these issues, we have, so to speak, punched below our weight. Why? Because we haven't been focused enough, we haven't been target-oriented enough, and we haven't been coordinated enough. We are a world leader when looking at what we've done on our own continent. We've managed to grow our economies while decoupling emissions and reducing these emissions. This is leading by example. We are also the biggest trading partner for most developing countries in the world. We're the biggest provider of development aid in the world. We have the biggest and most far-reaching diplomacy in the world, including energy and climate diplomacy. But still, when you add this up, we are not today harvesting the possible synergies. And that is what we intend to do now. So building on the already good work that is being done, we want to do even more and be even more efficient. It is extremely important to realize that if we are to succeed in the green transition, take Africa as an example, 600 million people are without electricity, a growing population, countries being hit hard by climate change already now. The electrification, the deployment of more renewables fast is an absolute necessity for these countries, and we can help via diplomacy, technical assistance, development aid, utilizing our global gateway instruments, we can make a real difference. And this strategy will definitely help us do exactly that. Thank you.
Thank you, Executive Vice President. Thank you, Commissioners. Before moving to the Q&A part, let me remind and inform everybody that the press material is now online, as well as the full text of the global vision. Let's start here. And before posing a question, indicate who you are and what media you're representing, and also let us know to which college member you are addressing your question to. Thank you. Go ahead. It's fine.
Thanks. Yeah, this one is not turning red. It does by now. Thanks, Anna Keizer. My name is Matthijs Schiffers from Het Financiële Dagblad, and I have a question probably for Commissioner Hoekstra. If I read the plan, you want to support clean tech from Europe via all kinds of ways. And one drew my special attention. The EU will explore the potential for providing export credit support for EU clean tech. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, what form this credit support should take, and is this on top of the CBAM export support that you also have promised? Thank you.
Right? So it is, what I cannot do is to land here today with you the exact specificities. But what we can, of course, all imagine is that there could be a win-win with, for example, one of our African friends in the domain of clean technology, where we would be exporting and where a part of the premium would be financed through us, either directly or through MDBs, which would make it more attractive for businesses from Europe to basically move into that direction. Sometimes this is just a risk premium. Sometimes it is about the business case at large. And so that is the type of recipes you need to think of. And indeed, as you were implying, this is on top of or in addition to what we're doing in the domain of CBAM.
All right, I have next John, and then Fabio, and then the next round. John.
Hi, yes. John Ainger from Bloomberg News. We're a few weeks out from COP30, and I was just struck in this vision today that there's only one passing fleeting reference to the program of JETPs, the Just Energy Transition Partnerships. I was wondering if you could explain what the vision is for those now. And just secondly, coming off the back of that, the idea following that was country platforms, of which Colombia came forward last year with a $40 billion investment plan and has been trying to get support for that plan, including in the EU. Obviously, President Petro's successors are going to be coming after him, and I believe that only one of around 5 or 6 potential successors have committed to stay the line on the fossil fuel exit. All the others want to start fracking. So I'm just wondering, what should countries reading this document take from it if they want to exit from fossil fuels? Thank you.
So, I'm sure the others feel tempted to come in as well. First and foremost, we will continue with the JETPs. But what this does is actually it frames the conversation as we seek to have it internationally going forward. And that is a way that is more business-oriented, that is also tapping more into the demand that many of our partners are having, and it is making sure we're bringing our own businesses on board. Just to give you one example of a conversation I was having also in Brazil. One of the interlocutors from the Global South was saying, look, we very much appreciate to have the conversation about your ambition and the targets. We even more appreciate how much you are doing in terms of development aid and Europe financing roughly 30 billion out of the 100 billion if I take the 2023 numbers. But what we would be very keen to also discuss with you is financial instruments, either directly or through your MDBs, that would make it easier for us to move into the domain of clean tech. And secondly, wouldn't there be a way to bring more of your businesses into our geographies, again, particularly in the domain of clean tech? And both these elements, in my view, are a fair ask. And I can see a huge benefit, not only on the side, on the receiving end, not only on the other side, but also from a European perspective. Is that completely new? Of course it isn't. But it has not been the core focus of the conversation as we have been structuring it internationally. And in my view, in the world we live in, it should be.
Maybe I should also just add that even though none of us here will neglect the challenges and also regret the fact that in some areas the fight against climate change is in a crisis. We certainly don't neglect that. It's one of the reasons why we put forward this strategy. At the same time, though, it is important to say that there are also a lot of very positive tendencies. Very positive. We are deploying more renewables globally than ever before. We are well on track to reaching the targets of the global stocktake from COP28, meaning that we are transitioning away from fossil fuel globally by providing alternatives. So the doubling of energy efficiency measures and especially the tripling of renewable energy. And this is at the core of this strategy. This is our main objective. Now, what we have to offer is then a whole range of different policy instruments. And it's been called transactional. That's a little bit of a negative expression to use, but in the sense that, yes, it is target-oriented and it is mutually beneficial. That is actually a good way of describing it, because we will now, by using trade instruments, by using development aid, using technical assistance, using diplomacy, using multilateral institutions where we have a big say, move the international society in the right direction, and therefore also the countries that you mentioned. And I can definitely say for my part, and I'm sure my colleagues will agree, that whenever we do go and meet ministers, decision makers, heads of state from developing countries around the planet, they ask us to take leadership. They ask Europe to take leadership on these issues, and we will.
Yes, may I comment on that? Thanks for the question, John, because I think that it is a very interesting question, and my colleagues have responded. I could add the importance of stepping up in the strategic approach, in the holistic approach. For decades, we Europeans have been concentrating our efforts in our domestic action, and of course, there have been tools to support others' actions. But what we want to express is that, yes, we need to go up and to come up with the whole set of responses that we can combine, blending public and private, thinking geopolitically, thinking of the importance of the financial industry, thinking of the importance of those providing services, infrastructures and industries, thinking on the importance of using our own tools, including the global gateway capacities to provide this support. So yes, the existing programs will remain, but I think the holistic approach, the strategic and geopolitical thinking from the European perspective, and this offered to the rest of the world in a context where maybe the rest of the world are hearing different messages, some of them not very optimistic, some of them absolutely lacking solidarity, some of them looking to the past instead of or weaponizing or threatening on how they should think in terms of development. We want to come up in a much more committed, strategic and geopolitical consistent manner.
Thank you very much. Fabio.
Yes, thank you for the floor. This is Fabio Napoli for the Italian news agency Public Policy. I've got two questions. First for Vice-President Ribera about the deforestation law, which is an important topic also for many EU partners around the world. Member states are asking for simplification other than the postponing. So can you still exclude that the Commission is not open to other changes? And then to those who wish to respond, the EU still consider the US administration as a reliable partner when we talk about climate? Thank you.
Let's first take questions on the strategy. So, Executive Vice President, if you want to come to the deforestation, but if you want to comment on how reliable a partner we are, who wants to start?
Maybe I can say just a few words on that, because on one hand, it's no secret that we don't see eye to eye on questions like the role of renewables. We, of course, also regret the fact that the US are pulling out of many multilateral international collaborations which has the aim to fight climate change. Paris Agreement, of course, being the most important one. On the other hand, we are working closely together with the American administration on the field of energy. Right now, the US is our second biggest source of LNG. This is positive because the country that used to have the second place after Norway was Russia. So yes, we are in a process of diversifying our gas imports, and American LNG is a part of that. On nuclear, there is also, of course, possibilities of working together. On the issue of climate change, Wopke can elaborate more than I can, but it is clear that we are still trying, of course, to be in a dialogue with the administration and also with individual states and cities and subnational actors.
Yeah, so on the credibility, just to be very clear, that is rock solid. And that was also, once again, my experience at the UN, but also the last couple of days in Brazil, where people not just acknowledge, but also very much appreciate the ambition that the European Union has set. And they do understand that the conversation we're having on 2035 and 2040 takes slightly longer than anticipated and linked to the formal UN process. But the range that we have indicated, 63.5 or 0.3 to 72.5, is amongst the most ambitious in the world. I think it is only topped by the British. And in the end, people don't tend to care about the exact political process back home. They care about results. And they care about the number the European Union is coming up with. And you know, those who are not impressed, I would just invite to seek to match our numbers, which would be fantastic for the globe at large. I think that's it from my side.
Okay, so thank you for the two questions. I could say that the data and the observers show to what extent the willingness to invest in green energy, the factual data on investments in green energy or clean tech remain as a major priority for US investors. So I think that there may be many different views on what we could consider in terms of with whom we relate on what, and of course the levels of relation may change depending on the issue, but yes, there are lots of players that are still quite committed and understand that the long-term, long-lasting profitability, also in business terms, is around this climate and clean energy solutions. Dealing with the deforestation regulation, well, you know that in these days we have already learned that more than 8 million hectares have been deforested last year. This is a terrible figure. And in fact, it shows to what extent this is a real concern, so to ensure that we can comply on a science-based approach with our climate, biodiversity and security goals. This means that, yes, of course, we need to work on learning, on tracking where and why deforestation takes place. Even more, if we are thinking about carbon credits in the international markets, we need to count on sound information. This means tracking where deforestation may come from. If we want to count on people, on consumers here in the European Union that understand what it means, we need to track what is deforestation and where it comes from. So I could say that, as the Commissioner Roswell was saying, a conversation has been open and the teams are working. The teams are working to ensure the capability to track and prevent deforestation. And of course, my preferred option could be to avoid any delay or to the regulator on something which is so critical. But as I said, people, teams, experts are working to come up with the best possible way forward.
Thank you very much. I have next Alice and then David.
Hello, Alice Hancock, Financial Times. Just to build on Fabio's question, I wondered if the EU feels a certain responsibility to keep momentum on the climate agenda alive in the US, given the pressure that the Trump administration is putting on climate policy, indeed even the EU's climate policy. And I'm just wondering how that squares with, for example, the pressure it's putting on EU green regulations. And just a quick second one. On the support for CBAM, could you just explain a little bit more in detail how that would work? Would certain countries be prioritised? Yeah, just some more detail would be great.
As you wish, as you wish.
So, it is very clear that when some countries, especially the second biggest emitter in the world, decides to step out of the Paris Agreement, then there's an extra need for other leaders to act and to show in as forceful a way as we can that we are not backtracking. We're not stepping down, we're stepping up. Climate change is not a lesser of a problem today than it was last year. It's a bigger problem today than it was last year. So, yes, I think it is expected of Europe. I think it's in our own interest to do it. And what we're aiming to do with this strategy is also to show that for our own growth, for our own competitiveness, it's actually an advantage to work closely with partners around the world, because there is a lot of potential for European businesses. There's a lot of potential also for import of green energy that we also need to become independent.
Yeah, building on that, and I couldn't agree more. It is a major blow, as I've said before, that the US has been checking out, at least diplomatically. Very much agree with what Teresa was saying. If you would look under the waterline, you would find that many US companies are basically continuing with what they have been doing before. Why? Well, because there's simply a business case. And in that sense, businesses, vote with their feet, if you will. But of course, if the most formidable geopolitical player on the earth, the second largest emitter and the largest economy, checks out, that does something to the process. We will stay the course. We will continue to take a huge amount of responsibility, which is internationally recognized as second to none. But we're also using the momentum to invite others, particularly those amongst the G20, to step up their levels of responsibility. And frankly speaking, that is only fair. It's not going to be either or. We're going to continue in any case. But if you would look at also the level of affluence that many countries have managed to accumulate in the last 10, 20 years, which is a formidable thing for them, and it is something I deeply admire, but with affluence also comes responsibility. So making sure we have a larger group of countries that do take responsibility for this global problem is hugely important. Then specifically on ETS and CBAM. The one thing, or let me rephrase, one of the most effective things we have done globally, but also certainly we have done here in Europe, is make sure that we're pricing carbon and we're coming up with a market-based system as an approach to driving down emissions. The good news is that there is a lot of pull from other nations to do the same, and that is why we're trying to incentivize as many as we can to build something that is either very similar or at least somewhat similar, and share the lessons that we have learned, sometimes the hard way, on our ETS system. On CBAM, we're also giving a lot of assistance, and we're articulating to them that for us, the best CBAM is one that doesn't make any money. We're not in the money for that game. Rather, on the contrary, we want to make sure that what we're doing is fair to European businesses, and we want to make sure that emissions are being driven down globally. And therefore, if others manage to make sure that there is zero value of CBAM, that means that they have done the right thing. And whatever we can do in that process, particularly our friends in the Global South, to assist and support them, we will.
I may come up with a broader view. I could not shy from saying that, according to my own reading, Europe, the European Union, is a kind of global good. Global good for democracy, for peace, but also global good on climate action. I've been working on climate action for more than 25 years, thinking and strategizing together with my European colleagues back in 2001, remember what had happened in 2001, how to react and keep everybody on board when the US decided to step down from the Kyoto Protocol. Then back in Trump 1, when he came up saying that he did not believe, did not act on climate action. And now, for the third occasion, saying that he would step down from the Paris Agreement. I could say two things. The first one is, if we Europeans are a little bit under a shock, and it was even much more difficult back in 2001, and the world trends in terms of thinking, assessments, willingness to count on sustainable and inclusive development, understood that climate action was important, now it is even more important today. It is more clear and more visible for everybody. The second thing is that in the three occasions, it was not only the Europeans or the rest of the world that decided to keep on working on climate action. It is that the American society, to a large extent, understood that if they wanted to be an industrial powerhouse, if they wanted to be a secure place to live, they needed to keep on doing on climate action independently on what it could be the federal approach in terms of multilateral cooperation. So honestly, I think that this is tough, it is difficult, it is turbulent times, as we have already said, but I have no doubt on the importance of staying high, loud and clear on this point, and to keep on building alliance, partnerships and strategic thinking with our partners.
Thank you very much. We need to start wrapping. I don't see any questions requested online, so I will keep it in the room. So David and then Christian, last question.
Yeah, hello. David Abiyago from Argus Media for Commissioner Hoekstra. You said, if I can quote you literally, we're not in the money for the game. I think I understand what you meant. But on CBAM, so can exporters of clean tech, clean goods, green goods, can they expect CBAM export support next year? What would that look like? Will that be coming from the CBAM revenues? How will it work? Can they get confidence there? Thanks.
So, just to be clear on we're not in this for the money. Of course, this system in itself is generating money, as we've always projected. But what we've also been very clear about is that we're doing this to prevent carbon leakage from the European Union. And it is only fair that what we ask from our own businesses in terms of greening their processes and the standards against which they produce, that is also something we expect increasingly from those who are bringing their stuff into the European Union. So it is, I don't think it gets any fairer than this, right? We're not asking anything from anyone, we're not asking from ourselves. Then secondly, on exports. What I've said many times before this year is that we are very ambitious on tackling a range of issues in the domain of CBAM. It's a great system, but it needs improvement from a couple of angles. One is simplification, that we have already done. The second one is exports, where we're making sure that this is fairer for our companies. And we have come up with a first communication, as I'm sure you are aware, before summer, and we intend to finalize that in the months to come. The third one is scope, and looking into how far down the value chain you could actually go, again, to make sure that the system actually works, that it is fair, and that you're tackling emissions. And the fourth and the final element, which we seek to do also in the next couple of months, is circumvention. how do you make sure that that system that we're building is not being gamed? And the mix in whatever country or factory is not just staying the same, but they're only shipping the green stuff to us. And that is the fourth element we're looking into. Again, highly ambitious to nail all four in this calendar year, but so far we're absolutely trying to meet the deadline of the end of this calendar year, at least in terms of communication on all four.
Christian.
Thanks, Christian with Ends Europe. According to your own planning for this was supposed to have been a strategy specifically drawn up ahead of COP30, but there's no mention whatsoever of COP30 in the strategy. So I was wondering what happened, and does this have anything to do with the EU's lack of an NDC?
No, rather on the contrary. And as I was saying to you, to one of your colleagues, in my view, very convincingly, the credibility of the European Union, at least if I reflect on the conversations I've been having, is absolutely rock solid. Why is that? Because people actually, they don't care about the exact political process. They do care about the number and the true north that Europe is articulating. And that is exactly what we have done with the statement of intent. And we're currently formalizing, as you are aware, the conversation on 2035 and 2040. And I'm positive that we will manage to have the 2035 target also formally before we walk into Belém. Why then not focus specifically on this COP in a strategy? Well, because typically a strategy is something that you're doing for the mid and the long term, right? And the COP is only a couple of weeks ago. So what you do need to do in a strategy is articulate how you want to go forward, regardless of the exact event that is coming up really soon. And if I take this strategy, it is fit for purpose for this COP, but I'm sure also for the COPs hereafter.
Okay, then Maria, and the last question to Sabina, and then we have to wrap.
Hello, Maria Psara with FC Newspaper Greece. It's for the Commissioner on Energy, and it's about the Great Sea Interconnector, the cable that connects Cyprus with Greece. Today you would have a teleconference with the ministers of Cyprus and Greece. First of all, has the meeting happened already? If yes, you say no. So if not, could you please tell us if the EU would remain in funding despite the geopolitical tensions that can be created and despite the disputes that are now ongoing? Thank you.
I did actually answer you already once today. I understand that you're a little bit impatient, but I have not had the meeting yet. The Great Sea Interconnector is indeed a very important project for the European Union, and it remains to be so. And I work closely, and I'm personally very committed to this, as is the President and the entire Commission. So let's hope for some progress, and we will certainly keep you and the public in general informed when we have something new. Thank you.
Sabina.
Sabina Rossetta, ANSA with the Italian news agency ANSA. Thanks for the floor. It's for Vice-President Ribera. It has to do with the exchange with Italy on the so-called golden power and the intervention of the government on the merger between Unicredit and Banco BPM, but at the end of the day they withdrawn the proposal. I wonder if there is still a real possibility that the Commission could intervene under Article 21 of the EU merger regulation, asking Italy to withdraw the decree. And what would be a possible timeline for a possible decision like that? Thank you.
We're finishing this press conference in a very global array of topics. Vice President, do you want to take a... It's not really related to this topic at all, but...
No, just to say that, as you know, I do not comment on ongoing cases, and this is still an ongoing case. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Executive Vice President, Commissioners. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and have a nice rest of the afternoon. Thank you very much.